I'm going to be running through a brief tour of the grant application system, GAS for short. We're in our staging system at the moment, so this looks slightly different to your live system, and we can tell we're in staging because we've got a pink banner at the top of the screen here. In our staging system, I will be able to select from any of the organisations that we have set up in this system. In the live version of the system, if I'm logged in as a member or a staff member, finance for example, I will be taken straight to the organisation that I have permissions over, or my dashboard screen where I can view all of my requests. In the top right hand corner here, I can see the permissions that I have applied to my account. So I have admin permissions or impersonate permissions, so that I can show you what it looks like to submit a request as a member, as a staff approver, and also another level of staff approval, so perhaps a member of your finance team who can make payments. So to start with, I'm going to select an organisation that I'm going to submit a request from. So I'm going to select the Arts Students Association. On this dashboard, I would be able to see who has permissions for this organisation. So I would be able to see who has the ability to create and edit requests, who can approve at level 1 and who can approve at level 2. At the moment we are in our staging system, so there isn't anybody there, but in the live system you'll be able to see a list of people. So to start with, I am going to create a request, and I'm going to create a request as a society member. So I'll select society member here. I can see any pending or recent requests on behalf of my organisation, which may be from myself or from another member of my organisation. I'm going to show the process of creating a new grant application initially, but there are two types here. So there is a grant application which is submitted prior to an event, and we have a grant application request which is submitted after the event. There are slightly fewer stages because on the post-event grant application I only need to type in actual expenditure rather than expected, and then go through the process again post-event to enter my actual expenditure. So I'll show you both of those processes in just a moment. So to start a new grant application, we select this option here. So we can see that there are some fields which can't be edited. That's because they are pulling through from the system, so my name and my uni ID, but I can enter my mobile number, and I'll start typing in the information about the event that I am running. So we can pop in our title, select our start date and time, add an overview or summary of the event that I'm putting on, and an outcome. So perhaps, why am I putting this event on? A justification of what I'm running. There is a field just below it called project attachments, which can be amended, where the member could upload a document. So perhaps they're uploading a justification of why they're putting on the event, some more information about the event that they're running itself to support their application for their funding. And if it's an event, they can also add some expected attendance, so we'll add 30 people there. We can add some expected expenditure, so I'm going to add in expected expenditure for some flyers that I'm going to be distributing, which are going to cost $20, and I can add my type of grant that I'm using. These fields can be configured, so we can configure these as per the grants which you have. There is the option for the member to upload a receipt or invoice. For example, at this stage they may have received a quote from somebody for the work. They may not have spent the money yet, so they don't have a receipt, but they could upload a quote here, or perhaps they have already spent this money and they can upload a receipt. I'm not going to upload one at this point, so I'm just going to click add. and I'm going to add some expected expenditure for a venue as well. I think that's going to cost me around $100, and I'm going to select the same grant type and add. If there is expected income, so say they're selling tickets for the event, they're running, and they can add their expected income here. So let's say we think we're going to get $30 in ticket sales. We could add some evidence there, so that might be a photo of the ticket that they're selling. Okay, so I've added my expected expenditure and my expected income. So I can add in my requested grant amount here. So my net budget here, my $90, that's calculated by my expected expenditure minus my expected income. So I may just request my $90, I may request a different amount, but I am just going to request the $90 at this stage. If I can't afford the upfront expenditure of the event that I'm putting on, I may need to request a down payment. So I'm going to request a down payment of 50% of the grant amount. I'm going to tick that I agree to some terms and conditions. So again, this can be customized and it can be a link to some terms and conditions that you have added. I can save my changes, so if I'm not ready to submit my application, I can save changes. I can submit, which will send it on to the next level of approval. I could withdraw, so I could cancel. I'm going to submit at this point, so I'm going to click submit. And we can see now the status of my application is submitted. So now I'm going to go on to staff level 1 approver. And I can see it flashes up there that my application has been submitted. As I'm a member of staff, I can see this dashboard, so I could filter requests to look at by organisation, because I can see requests on behalf of many organisations in the system rather than just the one that I am a member of, if I were a committee member or a member of a club or society. I can filter by event ID, I can search some text, I can amend the period of requests. I could search by category, so these are all grouping types that you have set up in your system. And I could also search by status, so if I'm looking at all requests which have been approved and waiting acceptance, I could change the filter to look at requests of that status. But I'm just going to go directly into this new request that I've had come through to me. There we go. So there are some fields which cannot be edited now, but I can check the information which has been submitted. So I need to, because the member has requested an amount of down payment, there is an additional stage here that I need to say how much of a down payment I agree to paying the individual. So I can see the amount of down payment there. And I'm just going to agree to pay that full amount and the full amount of the grant. I can save my request, so if I'm not ready to send it on to the next stage of approval or cancel the request or query the request, I could save it. There are a few fields here which have an ellipsis. What that means is if I open up this field, it gives me the option to add some notes. So if I were querying the request, let's say the member hasn't submitted enough of an outcome, or I believe they've made a mistake with their expected expenditure or income, I could query the request. I could add some notes in there, and that would send a notification to the person who has submitted the request. I could deny the request, which cancels it. That's an end state. But I'm going to approve the request, which is going to send the request on to the next stage of approval. So we can now see it's awaiting level 2 approval. So I'm going to go on to staff level 2 approver. Again, some of the options are greyed out. I could amend the approved down payment or the approved total grant that the level 1 approver has typed in there, but I'm just going to approve the request. So the request has now gone back to the member to accept. So if I go back to my society member, I can see the amount of down payment, the amount of total grant that I've been approved for. I could withdraw the request, so if I haven't been granted enough money, I haven't got enough down payment, or I haven't been authorised to have a down payment, or if the event has just been cancelled, I could withdraw my request. But I am just going to accept. So I'm happy with the down payment amount and I'm happy with the approved total grant amount. So now it's going to go through those stages of approval again to pay the down payment. So again, I can go to approve. So I'm in level 1 and I've approved, and I go to level 2. I'll select my request, and now I can mark my down payment as made. So I'm going to type in my paid funds, so $45, and I'm going to type in a transaction number. So again, that field can be customized based on what you need to type in there. The payment is made out with the system. So the system doesn't make a payment to an individual. It's just a way of you tracking that process through. So this is an additional stage to the application request. So if no down payment was needed, then it would just wait for the individual to have run the event, and then they can add in their actual expenditure and actual income rather than going through the process of approving the down payment and making the down payment. But now I'm going to go back to being my society member so that I can add in my actual spend and my actual income. So the event has now finished. So if I click into my request, I now have the option to add in my actual attendance, if I have any returned funds, and I can also amend my actual expenditure and actual income, or perhaps add in additional items if I've spent money on other things that I didn't expect to be spending money on. So let's say I actually spent $90 on the venue, and I spent an additional $25 on a backdrop. And I could upload a receipt here because now I did pay for this item. So I'm going to click Browse, select my image of my receipt, upload, and then add. So now I'm going to submit my request for a final time. And I'll go through those approval levels for one last time. So again, we can check the amounts that have now been submitted. Approve query. I'm going to approve. Staff level 2 approver. So I can type in my final payment of paid funds. And again, I could type in my transaction number there. And I'm going to mark the payment as made. Again, this isn't within the system. This is a payment that's made out with the system. So now if I click into the request, I can see at the bottom, I can see this the entire time, so right from when the request is first created, the history of that request. So when the application was made, any detailed changes that were made at that point, and the various people who have been involved in that request. Now if we go back to being a society member, I'm going to create a new request. So I'll go into my dashboard and I'm going to create a new post-event grant application. So this is a type of request that would be used if the event has already taken place. I was going to type in the same event information here. So add in my summary and my outcome. I can agree to the terms and conditions. I could upload a document, but here I enter my actual attendance and my actual expenditure. And I could upload a receipt just like I did before. And once I'm happy with all of my details, I can enter in the requested grant amount and submit my request. So again, if I go to the various levels of approval now, rather than having to approve any down payment or approve the grant amount before the event, all I'm doing is going through the actual expenditure, actual income and the requested grant amount and approving the amount that I'm willing to offer the individual. So again, I have the option to approve, query or deny with the ability to add notes. And finally, we'll go to the staff level 2 approver, who will click into the request, check all of the details of that request, and I can approve for payment. So now I've approved the grant request for payment, I can now mark the payment made. Again, this payment isn't made inside the system, it's made out with the system. So we enter our final paid funds, we enter our transaction number, and we mark our payment as made. And the request has now been acquitted. So that's the full process of submitting both a request before the event happens with a down payment included. So there may be requests that go through your system without a down payment, in which case that stage the down payment doesn't need to be approved, and you'll also have the option to submit a request after the event with slightly fewer stages of approval.